So, okay, now we're gonna switch to another one of the groups I talked about, Simon Searchlight, and Lauren Walsh is going to come up and speak. And right before she does, to be able to do the biorepository collection out here, you have to be on their platform. And so that QR code that says Simon Searchlight, they actually do produce quarterly reports. I've seen some families share them. If you actually sign up, you get to see those quarterly reports. And I know several folks in this room have contributed to Combined Brain, which is a separate biorepository than Simon Searchlight, and I would say do both. Eric yesterday referenced it as, some folks are Coke people, some folks are Pepsi people, right? And so the same applies for researchers. We saw a publication recently that we felt like KS should have been a condition that they studied. Eric reached out to him and said, why didn't you study us? And they said, because we didn't have enough patient samples within Simon Searchlight to actually warrant us being one of those conditions. And it's like, when you hear that, it's like, well, dang it, right? That's a missed opportunity for us. So we encourage both. Obviously, Simon's is here today. Combined Brain's here as well. It's not a competition that's a negative thing. It's a rising tide lifts all boats. So I would encourage you to do both. So, Lauren? Do you want to hold or do you want it in here? There's the advancer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Walsh. I am an Administrative Director of Research at Geisinger, and I'm here today to talk about the Simon Searchlight Research Program. Okay, I've got 20 minutes to talk to you today. I'm going to give you an overview, if you're not familiar, about what is Simon Searchlight, who are we, what do we do, and also give a little bit of information back about the data that we've collected so far. So Simon Searchlight is an international research program. The goal is to accelerate science and improve lives for people with rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. So we know that we can't do this in a vacuum. The families are very important, researchers are very important, and one of the biggest goals that we have is to connect the two groups. So we are a name, but we are also many faces. This is the team from Simon Searchlight. We come from 3 sites. The first is the Simons Foundation, which serves as the sponsor of the study, but also an investigator. Should be closer. Thanks. We are 3 sites. Simons Foundation is a sponsor. They are also an investigator. You'll see several staff up there from the Simons Foundation, and we also come from 2 clinical health systems. One being Boston Children's Hospital, where Dr. Wendy Chung is a principal investigator, and the other is Geisinger, which is a large health system in Pennsylvania, under the team led by Dr. Cora Taylor. We also have a community advisory council, so we are not doing these things without thinking about patients and families. Community Advisory Council members serve for 2-year terms each. The application process is free, and if you're interested in becoming a member of the CAC, please reach out to us or come connect with us at our we include patient advocates and parent advocates, and from all countries. So we try to have a really diverse mix of families who are providing information from around the world. Okay. What are the goals of Simon Searchlight? For those who are familiar, this will be familiar, but I'm trying to give some broad strokes overviews so I can get to the data. So our mission is to shed light on rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. Ryan mentioned this earlier. It's really important to collect rare natural history data, and we do that in a standardized fashion. We collect information that is important to you, but also information that is useful for FDA and for upcoming clinical trials. So things that, again, Ryan mentioned, like the Vineland, the ORCA, things that are salient to your community, but that are also relevant for developing trials. So we collect detailed medical and behavioral history. Again, surveys, sorry. It's very useful. A lot of these are done on an annual basis, and we incentivize them. So upon completion of surveys, you do get rewarded with gift cards. And we also have optional biosample collection. So if you are interested in providing a sample, we are out there today and tomorrow until noon. You don't have to have registered right now to be able to provide a sample if you want to get to that point. So we can help you through the registration and consenting process and give you more information. So please connect with us. one of the things we do is we synthesize information and we share it back with you. So Jeff mentioned quarterly reports. I'll show a little bit of a snapshot of what those look like. We want this experience to be meaningful for you now, but also for families in the future. So we do provide information back, and I'll again share an example of what that looks like. We also share de-identified data and samples with qualified researchers. Folks like Dr. Sid, who will be speaking tomorrow, they are the ones who are making strides with the data that you are. We de-identify the data and make it available at no cost to researchers, and samples come at a nominal cost. We connect researchers and participants from around the world. We know that you all are doing a tremendous job of providing information, but it doesn't just, it's not useful if it's just sitting, so we're trying to connect you with researchers who can make the best use of that information. And we also want to promote, just in general, better understanding of genetic conditions. So we study many. Sorry that you can't see everything on this slide, but I'm happy to provide a PDF copy if folks are interested. But we do study the 9q34 deletion and variants in EHMT1, both known to cause Kleefstra syndrome. We have participation, like I mentioned, that is international, so you don't have to be from any one specific country to be eligible to participate. You just have to have an uncertain pathogenic or likely pathogenic variant in EHMT1 or a 9q34 deletion to be able to participate. And we also have participation in 7 languages. So if your primary language is English, Dutch, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, or Spanish, you can participate in Simon Searchlight and contribute data. Okay, so I mentioned that we collect data and samples. This is a snapshot of the data portion that we are collecting. So families first sign up, they register, complete a consent form completely online, and then provide a genetic lab report. For most, this is a copy from the clinical testing laboratory. If you don't have a ready copy, you can also provide a clinic note as long as it has variant nomenclature. And we have a team of genetic counselors that review those results, and then upon approval, confirmation that you're in the right place, you unlock this series of baseline surveys. So it might look like a lot. It's all assigned at the first time point that you register, and you complete each of them. And for all of those that are X'd off in the annual column, you're also available to complete those on a longitudinal basis. So those are made available to you every year. Okay, I mentioned that we provide information back to families. So this is something that can be useful to you in the short term. Upon completion of several surveys, you'll get a personalized report that's posted to your dashboard. So that tells you, your child is falling in this range on this assessment, and this is what that means for you and your family and your child. And those are things that are really useful to bring to your child's teachers, to bring to their clinical appointments, to just give a picture to someone who is less familiar with KS than you are. We also provide summary snapshots. So on our website, we have pages for every gene that we study, and we do provide summary information that you can see there from the annual medical history surveys that you are completing, as well as the Vineland. We also, I mentioned before, provide quarterly reports, and you can see a snapshot of what one of those quarterly reports looks like on the right there. That we select a handful of specific salient items to families, and we say, this quarter we've focused on this assessment or this medical condition, and here's where is reporting. This is what your community is reporting in these areas. I'm losing audio, I think. Does it sound okay? Okay. And so those come out to your email every quarter, and it just gives you a picture of what your community looks like. We also do in-depth presentations at conferences like these. Okay, and I mentioned too that we do collect blood samples. This is an optional component of the registry, so it is not something that you have to do. If you are interested in providing natural history survey data, you can do that without having to provide a blood sample. But if you are interested, we are available and here today with phlebotomists to do that. Also, if we're not collecting samples at conferences, we can ship a sample home. Live in the United States, you can bring that to a Quest center. If you don't live near a Quest center, please contact us. We can try to find other options. You can also connect with your clinician. If your child already undergoes phlebotomy in some clinic and they'd be willing to do the draw, you can certainly do that as well. and then mail the kits back to us. The laboratory mails them back to us, so if you go to a Quest center, they are the ones who are shipping the kit on your behalf, and it goes to a biorepository that Simon Searchlight maintains. Okay, now I'll get into the meat and potatoes. What does the registry data look like? So I'll start here with one caveat that we do study the 9q34 deletion. We also study variants in EHMT1. We currently don't have enough participants with the recurrent 9q34 deletion to be able to present summary aggregate data back to you from that specific component of your community. We do have 5 families that have provided a genetic lab report, but that's not enough to summarize and provide back in this format. So everything that you'll see from here forward includes only patients with EHMT1. And the vast majority of the information we're providing back for medical history comes from those with pathogenic and likely pathogenic variants, which is the majority of the community that have registered so far. Okay, here's a nice overview of the progress of the community within Simon Searchlight. So moving left to right, you can see how many families or individuals have registered, starting with 49 individuals have created an account and indicated that EHMT1 is their gene. 37 of those have provided a genetic lab report that has been reviewed and approved by a genetic counselor on our team. 21 of those have gone on to fill out surveys, and 19 of those have provided blood samples. And just as a reminder, if you are in one of those bins, if you have completed surveys, if you have provided a blood sample, just a reminder that these things are updated in blood, but the surveys, so please continue to look at your dashboard and complete things if they are assigned to you there. And I will say these counts include participants with uncertain likely pathogenic and pathogenic variants, but the data that I will show after this comes from only those with pathogenic and likely pathogenic variants. So we do collect biospecimens as well. So of the 38 samples we have available, they come from 19 individuals. Those samples are binned into whole blood DNA and what's called PBMCs, or peripheral blood mononuclear cells. For the researchers in the room, or for those inclined, PBMCs can be made into induced pluripotent stem cells. And when you consent for Simon Searchlight and provide a blood sample, you can indicate upon consent whether you do or do not want your sample to go on to be made into a stem cell. If you don't, that's okay. You can provide that consent. If you do, researchers have the ability to go to our biorepository and request those samples and generate iPSCs. So we are international. Simon Searchlight has participants in 108 countries around the world. Those that are darker have more participants. And those with the little yellow bubbles indicate where KS families are coming from. So the vast majority are in the US, but some in Canada and in Europe as well. And I mentioned that most live in the US. Here is a snapshot of where families are coming from in the US. Okay, this is a busy slide. It shows all of the 34 participants with pathogenic and likely pathogenic variants. Someone from our team presented these data at your last meeting. We've had 3 more since last year who have joined. The plot here is called the lollipop plot, and it shows the frame shift or nonsense and splice site variants that are pathogenic, and they're grouped by functional region. Questions about these, please contact us. I am not a genetic counselor, but I'll do my best to connect you to the right person to make sense of these. But not pictured on this graph are the inter- and intragenic deletions. So those include more than just a single point mutation, but a larger swath of the gene, and 3 variants of uncertain significance. The data that I will show after this includes the medical history that was provided from a subset of folks whose variants are shown on this slide. Okay, so what I am presenting here are an overview of the medical history data we've collected. I want to preface this to say I'm not a clinician, and I am also not an expert in KS. You are. So the information that you're seeing here are things that are likely more familiar to you than to anyone else, but we wanted to reflect them back to you so you can just see where your community is and what you have told us so far. These data do not directly one-to-one match with things like gene reviews or case series publications because it's a swath of 17 individuals who have completed medical histories, and that's not exhaustive. So you can see that the age of most recent medical history is in the graphic there on the left. The average age of participants is 12 years, and the data that I will show skews more female. And it includes a majority of participants who are under the age of 18. Okay. This slide and the next one show summary overview data that, again, are more familiar to you than they are to me. And I'm probably not presenting anything that you don't already know. But the developmental and behavioral conditions reported most by the 17 individuals who completed the medical history are developmental disability or developmental delay or intellectual disability and language delay or impairment in all or most of the cohort. 60% reported an autism diagnosis, and then still reported were anxiety, ADHD, and OCD. And then moving into medical issues, you can see there on the left side a series of sort of bins of different body systems and the frequency with which those body systems have reported concerns. They range from least reported to most reported. And again, these might not match what you're seeing in gene reviews that include more participant data. And also that might include folks that have the 9234 deletion. This is just variants in EHMT1. I will go into depth about those that are most prevalent, so from orthopedic on down that are greater than 40%. I don't have a ton of time, so I won't go into specific details about which conditions are reported most in those that are above that 40% threshold, but you're welcome to come find me and I can show you those data. We will be here until the middle of the day tomorrow. Okay, so 100% reported neurological conditions. The entirety of the cohort reported low muscle tone or hypotonia. That's driving that 100%. Another quarter or so reported small head size or microcephaly, and then another smaller percent reported movement disorders and coordination problems. And again, this is representative of 17 individuals, so the more we have, the more precise the proportions we can show you. Also very commonly reported were GI conditions. GI conditions are very commonly reported in patients with neurodevelopmental disability in general, but in this specific community, about 3/4 are reporting constipation, another third are reporting GERD, and then a series are reporting other conditions, which include megacolon, pancreatic insufficiency, and other things. Vision problems also commonly reported. The most frequently reported was farsightedness, followed by astigmatism, and a handful of other conditions. Again, we're not in context of the general population too, so some of these conditions might be at comparable frequencies to what's seen in the general population, and not necessarily specific to KS. Many are reporting having ever had surgeries, the most common of which being head and neck surgeries. Under other, we've had 2 that reported having oral frenectomy, which is the tongue tie release, 1 who reported an appendectomy, and 1 Achilles tendon repair. Heart conditions were also more commonly reported. Again, this does not match what's in gene reviews where congenital heart conditions are more commonly reported, but in our cohort, congenital issues are reported in only 3 participants. Under other, we had 2 with pulmonary valve stenosis, 1 with atrial fibrillation. Endocrine conditions also common under this umbrella class includes obesity, which was the most commonly reported. And in orthopedic, about 1/4 of the cohort reported scoliosis. Importantly, treatment included bracing for 1 and surgery for 1. Okay, and seizure disorders, I know a common concern. Only 4 out of the 17 people who completed the annual medical history survey reported seizure activity. Of the 4 who said yes, endorsing seizures, 2 of those have taken medications for seizures and continue to take preventative medication for seizures. 3/4 of the cohort report control or remission of their seizures. with petit mal being more prevalent than simple partial. And we do ask all participants about their medication use. So I will say there are classes of medication listed there on the left. Those tell you not necessarily the use for the medication, but for example, 43% report using a medication for sleep. Others who reported sedative use include use off-label for sleep. And you can see these are just the common classes of medication that are being used. We do ask caregivers specifically with respect to seizures if there are any specific medications that work best, and no single medication stood out as the most effective, but again, we have a small sample of only 2 who reported having used anti-epileptics for seizures. Okay, I'll talk briefly about the Vineland. This is a measure that you're likely familiar with. It's used often in clinical care. It's often used as an outcome measure in the FDA. It's not fun to complete. It's lengthy. But we do collect it on an annual basis, and we incentivize completion. This is just a snapshot overview of where we are with the 11 participants who have completed the Vineland, and where those folks are over the age of 4. So 90% of individuals are likely making eye contact. All who completed this are feeding themselves and are using expressive language. Again, this is only representative of 11 individuals who completed the Vineland, so not exhaustive or representative of the entirety of the community. The child behavior checklist is another that's used frequently. It's used in clinical care, it's used in research to some degree, and it collects behavioral and emotional concerns. And this is also likely not news to you, but those in the ages 6 to 18 years, the 7 individuals who completed the CBCL indicated that the most common concerns were frequent distraction, obsessions, irritability, and mood swings. Okay. In summary, the most common issues that we had reported were developmental delay, intellectual disability, language delay or impairment, autism, hypotonia, and constipation. Several other conditions reported at not infrequent proportions. Okay. Thanks for your time. Please come find us. Again, if you'd like to provide a blood sample for biorepository, we're here until the middle of the day tomorrow to do so. If you've not registered, you're not sure where your account is, what status you have, if you registered 4 years ago and then you stopped participating and you're not sure where you are, we're here to help you. We'll sort of figure out what your next steps are and help you to continue to participate. Thanks for your time.
So I'm going to ask one question before you hop down. Can you speak at all to EHMT1 and how it's been identified as causative for autism within the Simons Foundation kind of gene list?
Sure. Okay. I come from a perspective where there are several genes that cause neurodevelopmental disorders in general. There isn't a singular gene that causes only autism or that causes only epilepsy or intellectual disability. In general, the genes that are associated with autism are often also associated with other neurodevelopmental concerns. Some just happen to have higher frequencies of things like autism. So EHMT1 being one of those where the frequency of autism reported is higher than maybe other genes where intellectual disability is more common or epilepsy is more common. But in general, most neurodevelopmental disorders aren't happening in isolation. They're usually some, comorbid picture of multiple things happening. Is that helpful?
Very helpful, and it's a little bit loaded question. No, I say it because for us, you hear about autism presenting in these different ways and how our kids don't necessarily present in classical autistic features. And I say it, and it's a loaded question because I think what it does, if you're able to push and fight for it, is it opens up access to care. And so for folks that are newly diagnosed, I just want to make sure that there's an understanding there that for our daughter, we pushed for the autism diagnosis and ultimately received it. And what that ultimately led was for 40 hours of ABA in-home care per week. And so from just a behavioral management and improvement standpoint, it's been dramatic for Ella, but also having someone else in the home helping 40 hours a week, the citizen figure of 53 hours a week for caregiving alone for that child, it's impactful. And so I personally, when we were going and seeking the diagnosis, we received a lot of pushback. And whether it's factually 100% accurate or not, I referenced Simons and said, look at this, EHMT1, which is causative for KS, is also on this site related to autism. And so you do the math. And I put it back on them and just try to use it as supporting documentation when we were meeting resistance.
So I can say I'm not a clinician, but I work with several who are qualified to answer this question better than I am, and I would say that one of the things that I've heard frequently is that it is difficult to diagnose autism in the presence of intellectual disability. Some clinicians will be afraid to do so, so there might be autism there, but it's secondary to intellectual disability, but like you said, autism is the condition, the diagnosis that opens a lot of doors to treatment, where intellectual disability doesn't always.
Thank you.